also, if you go to Cain, and I think I have that installed on, let me go to my desktop. If I load up Cain, I'll ignore that because I'm actually not really going to be using the network facilities. And I go on Tools, Hash Calculator, I can actually type in some text like and it gives me a whole list of common hashes. And that's useful if you find a hash, you can hopefully maybe figure out what kind of hash it is. By the way, guys, do y'all have better ways of doing that?
Of calculating a hash?
Well, not calculating, but just figuring out what kind of hash something is if you just found the hash.
That's usually my last resort. A lot of times I'll load it up in John with the jumbo patch, and it will tell you what kind of hash it is just as soon as it loads. And if you just load John and then the file, it'll come back with what kind of hash it is.
Oh.
So I do that a lot, or I use Google, or I use Hash. We're actually working on something for our website where you're going to be able to input the hash and it'll tell you what kind it is.
I'd like to hear more about that. Are you leaving us?
No, we're just going to hang for a minute.
Okay.
Things like that.
See y'all shortly. All right. Some great resources, and Question Defense is one of them on the list. If you want more information about, password hashes, password storage, and so forth, Nearsoft. I'm using a lot of stuff from Nearsoft's website. He has this article on password storage locations for popular Windows applications. It's awesome for telling you various locations, but also he makes so many different tools for revealing passwords on the system. And if I wanted to figure out where is this password really stored, sometimes it's easier for me to actually run his tool using some reverse engineering tools I got and see what his tool is actually looking at. And now I know where Windows really stores that. So his website and his tools have been a great resource for this presentation and actually figuring out things. By the way, this incredibly long URL right here, I have a bunch of stuff out there on cracking XP, Vista, and 2000 hashes. A lot of the same stuff works on 7 as well. I just haven't updated it. I already talked a little bit about Martin and Alex's site. Also, if you want a good password list page, skullsecurity.org is run by a guy named Ron. I've met him at a couple different HackerCons now. He has some great password lists, and one of the great things about his password lists is some of them actually have come from real-world user-leaked passwords. Like some service got hacked, and someone posted all the passwords online. So they're actually real-world examples of passwords people have chosen. It's not just some random dictionary. It's something that other people have used. So I think he's also known recently for downloading a ton of open Facebook profiles and collecting information and putting it out there on a big torrent.
He was just on Hold.com the last episode. He just talked about his work.
Ah, yeah.
Yes.
Which podcast?
207 part 2, I think. Paul.com.
Paul, H-U-L-L?
Paul. Yeah, Paul.
Oh, Paul. Okay.
Paul.
Yeah.
Paul Asterisks podcast.
Yeah.
As far as podcasts to listen to, Paul.com is awesome. Of course, ISD podcast. Exotic Liability I like.
Security Now?
I'm not so big on Security Now because he has. First of all, I'm tired of hearing the advertisements for his company. And not to mention, sometimes he seems to have the attitude of, well, there's this big problem, here's how you fix it, but we're not going to go into the details of it because we don't want people to use this exploit. No, I want the details. Give me the details. Secure Bit's pretty good. Security Justice. I know some other ones I'm probably missing. I've been listening to Disaster Protocol some now. RFA, Radio Free America, or Radio Free. Wait, sorry. What does RFA stand for? I forgot again.
Radio Free America.
Yeah.
That's dead
Anyway, the platforms I'm using, mostly I'm going to be attacking Windows 7, basically because it's what I use the most nowadays. We'll show a little bit about Windows XP as well, but most of the stuff I'm going to show is going to be for Windows 7. It's probably got the largest install base. If I show you anything in Linux, it's going to be either Ubuntu or Backtrack. Martin's actually one of the core Backtrack 4 developers, so probably a lot of his stuff is going to be done in Backtrack as well. Also, I'm going to show a little bit about Ultimate Boot CD for Windows, which is this really cool way of taking an XP Service Pack 2 or newer CD and from that installer make your own boot CD which runs a cut-down version of Windows, so you can run all sorts of Windows tools off of a boot CD, which I'm going to show a demo of that here in a bit. Alright, assumptions and workarounds. In most cases, these tools and attacks will require physical access to a box. That sounds, well, how does an attacker really go get that? Well, first of all, if someone does a physical pin test, they're going to get physical access. Not to mention, there's usually machines left out in someone's lobby or someplace they should be, or decommissioned machines that people didn't properly nuke and rebuild, or didn't properly wipe, that might have this kind of information on it. In some cases, for some of these attacks, you will either need to be able to log into a target account in the box. I'll show you some ways you can potentially do that. Maybe you'll just need access to the file system. Boot CDs are great for that. And you just may have to log in as a target account and not have to change the password using boot CD. I can, using some boot CDs I have, you can actually change a local password without having any privileges. You just boot from the CD, choose a local account, and change its password, and it works fine. Other ones, if you do that, it changes the hash value, and that hash value is not only used for logging in, but it's also used for encrypting other things in the system. So if you inject your own hash, things stop working. For instance, I got some CDs here. You can boot from them, change any local account, but then if you try to go in and dump someone's stored Internet Explorer passwords, it won't work because you changed their hash. And the way they do the storage, you have to have the original hash that the person used. Alright, a little bit about Windows Profile, because I'm going to be talking about Windows Profile a fair amount, and this is just so you know what I'm talking about. A lot of times in this presentation, I'm just going to reference C drive. Windows could be installed someplace else. Most of the time, it's always going to be C drive, but just for the sake of convenience, so I don't have to use really weird nomenclature, I'm just going to say C drive. There are some differences in subdirectories between different Windows versions, especially once you go between XP and Vista Windows 7. But I'm going to be mostly showing the Windows 7/Vista ones. Not too hard to figure out where they are on XP as well. As far as where the profile is stored, on Vista and 7, it's underneath users off the root of the system drive. And on XP, it's going to be underneath documents and settings. Same thing for Windows 2000, if anybody's still using that. Alright, also, some other files I want to talk about, and so you all know where they're at, and I'm also going to show some stuff here in a demo shortly. What I like to call the Windows Trifecta. If you have access to a box, physical access to its drive, 3 main files you really want to copy off as far as grabbing passwords later on are the SAM, System, and Security hives. These are all registry hives stored underneath Windows System 32 config, and they're in this location for XP, Vista, and Windows 7. Grab these files, they will become useful later. I've actually, in that pack I had everybody download, I gave some example files. If you, let me see. I have this Windows 7 config folder. I have the hives from the Windows 7 box. And I also have this XP config folder. These are those same hives from an XP box. We're going to be using them in some later demos so that you don't have to actually copy one off your own system. By the way, some of these tools I sent you all, first of all, your antivirus is going to scream like a little girl. Let's see, also, make sure no one's looking over your shoulder when you run them, because you might actually build some of your own passwords off your box. And so, by extension, don't look at someone else's screen while they're running these tools. But anyway, I have these already copied there, and in that pack for you all to be able to use. Let me go back. Alright, a little bit of note on antivirus. Like I said, it's going to scream bloody murder. Hi guys. If running anything on the system, if you're trying to run anything on the system that has AV, there's a few options you can do. Either disable real-time protection. I know a lot of people don't necessarily like that idea, but the only thing you can do to keep the tool from instantly getting deleted as soon as you plug in your thumb drive or whatever you're running it from. You can just OK the warnings as they pop up. Some antiviruses are better about this than others for adding exceptions. Some will just start deleting stuff willy-nilly, and it's really hard to tell it to leave Cain alone. Don't bother with it. I've actually had pretty good luck with Microsoft Security Essentials and being able to tell it not to mess with something. But that's an option. Also, if you don't want your tools instantly deleted, so you have to go out and download them, run them off a CD-ROM, or if you want the convenience of carrying a thumb drive around with all these tools, get a U3 thumb drive, and modify the CD partition on it to contain your tools. That way they're read-only from the scratch. And then you have your storage you can write to, but you also have the part that looks at the CD, and AV on the local box isn't going to instantly delete your tools as soon as you plug in your thumb drive. So I like that function of U3 by itself. Okay, a few different ways you can get file access to a system. By the way, all this stuff is foundational material. We all will get to the live demos eventually, but I at least want to mention these things before I continue on. You can pull the drive out and start extracting files. Like you can pull the drive out, pop it into another box, assuming it's not fully encrypted. You can go into Windows System 32 config and copy out those SAN system and security files. You can use a boot CD, which I'm going to be showing here in a bit. And anybody really wants to try, Windows. Alright, here's the deal with the boot CDs. I point everybody towards the Backtrack CD because you all can download it for yourself. There's also something called Ultimate Boot CD for Windows, which is based around Bart's PE Builder, where you can take XP CD and basically from the files on that make your own cut down version of Windows you can boot from the CD-ROM. Unfortunately, I couldn't put that ISO out there for obvious licensing reasons. So I brought 6 discs that people can just play with. Don't make copies of them. Give them back to me after class. But if you want to try them, you can boot from these and mess around with the local file system. Feel free to grab them and play with them. Just make sure they get back to me. And booting from the CD is another way to get access to the file system. You can rely on read permissions. I mean, if someone's silly enough to run FAT32 as the file system on the local drive, well, problem solved. I remember you used to see Windows 2000 boxes that, for various reasons of how they had to be imaged, they were FAT32. And what you could do is, back in Windows 2000 days, you actually were able to go in, delete the SAM file, or rename the SAM file, and then when you reboot the machine, it would recreate the SAM file for you. And I believe you had like a blank administrator password, and you just say to log in, do your stuff, then boot again from like a disk, put the original SAM file back, and there might be a few things in the log, but nobody's anything to wise on. You can't do that on XP or newer though. But to give you an idea of when people have really weak permissions or a badly chosen file system, you can get the things maybe you shouldn't be able to. Alright, a few notes on getting an account or changing an account password. There's also the tools out there. I imagine a few of you have heard of change NT password. This is like a Unix utility. You use it and it does like what's known as a hash insertion. Instead of the hash that was in the SAM file, it inserts its own. But I've had this screw up systems that people choose the wrong options. Not to mention, I think there's a little bit less risky way of doing it. Conboot's another option. You've ever seen Conboot? Conboot's nifty. Conboot is something you can run off a CD-ROM or with a little modification off a thumb drive. You boot from it, it modifies system memory, and the next time you log in, either you have a special guest account you can automatically log in with, or you can log in to any account on the local box with a blank password, depending on whether or not it's Linux or Windows. Now, unfortunately, Windows 7, I've been having some problems with it. I was able to get it to work on Windows 7 on a physical box. In a VM, I couldn't get it to work, and I couldn't get it to work on Windows 64-bit versions. But as far as just Windows 32 before Windows 7, and even the Windows 7 beta I tried way back when that was 32-bit on a physical box, I was able to boot from this and just log into any local machine with a blank password. Now that's fine for getting access and the privileges on the file system, though keep in mind that note I made earlier about if you change the password hash, you're not going to be able to get to some other things that are protected with the password hash. I did have that problem. I am going to demo this one because I like this as the safest option. Sala's password renewal. This comes on the Ultimate Boot CD for Windows, and essentially it allows you to, 1, change someone's password on the system, and 2, create your own administrator account on the system, which is awfully handy. That way you don't have to mess with anybody else's, but you still get all the file access. And the reason I say it's safer is it does all Windows ways of doing things. Essentially, if you actually follow what it does by reverse engineering it using some tools like Procmon, which I'll cover later, you'll see what it's doing is it's adding its own system service, and as soon as the machine boots, it creates an account for you. So it's probably the safest way I've found to